Jake, open your present so we can see what Mom and Dad got his. My sister Chelsea shouted from the velvet armchair in our parents' living room, jingling the keys to the white BMW and showing off the Rolex she had just received. I was sitting on the cold floor of the house in Portland, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and the artificial smell of Christmas pine. At 34, I felt like an abandoned child watching others play. The box in my hands weighed almost nothing. Too small to be anything significant. I opened it slowly, while my father smiled with that expression I knew so well, the same one he used when he was about to teach me a life lesson. Inside was a cheap leather wallet and, folded in the middle, a single $10 bill. "It's the start of his emergency fund, son," Dad announced in a solemn voice. "You've always been so responsible with money, unlike some people." He winked at Chelsea, who pretended to be offended. "My name is Jake Collins, and right now, I feel every cell in my body burning with humiliation." Outside, the white BMW gleamed in the garage with a giant red bow that probably cost more than my entire gift. Chelsea, at 32, danced around the room like a teenager, the keys jingling in his manicured fingers. "I need reliable transportation for my new graphic design clients," she explained, tossing her hair back. "Those artsy types expect a certain image, you know." Mom applauded as if she were watching a miracle. "Her little Toyota must be on its last legs, Jake. Chelsea can give you a ride when you need it." The Toyota that took me through the mountains for 7 hours yesterday. The Toyota I paid for myself 3 years ago. The Toyota that is more reliable than any relationship in this room. I couldn't breathe. 34 years of moments just like this crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. Birthdays where Chelsea got pony parties while I got supermarket cake. Graduations where the family seats were empty because Chelsea's soccer game was more important. "Thanks," I managed to murmur, tucking the bill into his wallet. Chelsea flopped down on the couch next to me, his expensive perfume invading my lungs. "Don't worry, bro. Now that I have my own car, I can take you wherever you want to go." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. "Actually, I think I'll drive home today." Dad frowned. But we agreed that his stay would extend until tomorrow. "It's Christmas, Jake." "Yeah, I know." I got up, leaving the wrapping paper scattered on the floor. "I just remembered something important I need to do." What they didn't know was that he really did have something important to do. Something he'd been planning for weeks, just waiting for the right moment. And that moment had just arrived. As he climbed the stairs to get his suitcase, he heard Chelsea talk to our parents about plans for a weekend trip in the new car. No one asked if he wanted to come along. At the door of my childhood bedroom, I stopped and looked back one last time. The photos on the wall told the whole story. Chelsea dominated every frame, every important moment, every family memory. But they didn't realize that I had been collecting evidence of all this for years. And if it is his enjoyment of this story of how a simple $10 bill would completely change the dynamics of a family, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what happened after I left that house on Christmas Eve was just the beginning of the biggest lesson my parents ever learned about the true value of a child. Driving through the empty streets of Portland in the early hours of Christmas morning, the memories began to unfold like a movie in slow motion. I was 15 when my parents bought their first house with a pool. Chelsea, at 13, immediately invited all her friends from school to a summer party. Crowded pool, expensive barbecue, professional DJ. The entire family budget was drained at that one party. 2 weeks later, when I asked to invite some teammates from the debate team over for a simple backyard barbecue, Dad said there was no money. "You understand, Jake. Chelsea needed to adjust to a new school. You've always been more independent." Independent. Her code word for you don't matter as much. I stopped at the first gas station I saw and, while filling up the tank, called my best friend from college, Marcus Rivera, who lived in Seattle. "Jake? Dude, it's 2 in the morning. Is everything okay? I'm driving to Seattle right now. Can I crash on his couch for a few days?" Marcus didn't ask any questions. "Sure, bro. The key is under the flower pot on the porch." Back on the road, my mind drifted back to when I was 17. High school graduation. I was the valedictorian, with a full scholarship to study engineering at the University of Washington. My parents missed the ceremony because his piano recital was on the same day. "It's just a school, Jake," Mom had said on the phone. "You'll have plenty of other graduations. But Chelsea's recital is special." Chelsea played 3 mediocre songs for an audience of 12 people. I spoke about perseverance and dreams to 500 graduates, parents, and teachers. Alone in the front row with his family. The pattern had been set since forever. Dad controlled the money, always finding reasons to deny me funds while financing Chelsea's every whim. Mom manipulated emotions, making me feel selfish for wanting any kind of attention or recognition. During college, I worked 25 hours a week on campus to pay for personal expenses. Meanwhile, Chelsea found herself on a 3-month trip through Europe, fully funded by our parents. She needs to expand her artistic horizons, Dad explained when I questioned why his scholarship didn't even cover books. You always knew exactly what you wanted. I knew what I wanted. His code for you don't deserve exploration. At 22, he graduated with honors in civil engineering. The graduation party was dinner at Olive Garden with 4 people. That same year, when Chelsea graduated with honors in graphic design, my parents rented a banquet hall for 80 guests. Design is a more competitive field, Mom justified. She needs to network. At 25, he bought his first house. Small but mine. I paid for it myself, every penny coming from my job as a junior engineer. My parents visited once in 3 years. During the same period, when Chelsea wanted to experience life in New York, they bought her a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan and paid her expenses for 2 whole years. Art requires an inspiring environment, Dad said when I complained that they never offered to help me with the down payment on my house. He's always been practical. He preferred to start small. Practical. Code for he doesn't deserve support. At 30, I was promoted to senior engineer at Morrison & Associates. 6-figure salary, responsibility for million-dollar projects. I called to share the news. That's great, honey, Mom said distractedly. You've always been ambitious. By the way, can he lend Chelsea $5,000? She wants to open a design studio. That same month, when Chelsea casually mentioned that she wanted a professional camera to expand his portfolio, my parents bought him $8,000 worth of equipment without batting an eye. Investment in her career, Dad explained. You're already established. Established. Code for you don't deserve any more investment. Every birthday told the same story. For Chelsea, elaborate parties, expensive gifts, the family's undivided attention. For me, simple dinners, practical gifts, parents constantly distracted, checking to see if Chelsea needed anything. Every Christmas followed the same script. Chelsea received gifts that cost thousands. I received useful items from the bargain bin. And during all those years, I swallowed my anger, justified the unjustifiable, and convinced myself that it was better to be the responsible son who didn't cause any trouble. But that night, driving through the cold dawn with a $10 bill in my pocket while his sister slept next to a brand new BMW, something finally broke inside me. It wasn't just about money. It was about value. It was about love conditioned on not bothering, not needing, not existing too much. It was about 34 years of being treated like a supporting character in my own family. What he didn't know, what none of them realized, was that her apparent passive acceptance was actually careful documentation. For years, I had saved every email, every text message, every photo of the inequalities. Not out of spite, but out of an almost compulsive need to validate my own sanity. And now, finally, I had a plan to do something with all that evidence. While they slept peacefully in Portland, imagining that I had accepted my role as the forgotten son once again, I was already formulating the most important lesson they would ever receive. A lesson about the true cost of valuing one child over another. A lesson that would begin as soon as I arrived in Seattle. I arrived at Marcus's apartment at 5:43 a.m. He greeted me in his bathrobe with messy hair, but his alert eyes showed that he hadn't gone back to sleep since my call. "Man, you look like a bomb about to explode," he said, pouring coffee as I collapsed on his couch. 34 years, Marcus. 34 years of being treated like a supporting character in my own family. I showed him the crumpled $10 bill that was still in my pocket. Marcus held it up to the morning light, as if examining criminal evidence. "While her sister got a BMW, he muttered. "Jake, this isn't just favoritism. It's psychological cruelty." Marcus had known my family since college. He had witnessed the phone calls where I begged my parents to attend my engineering graduation. He was there when I found out they had missed it to watch Chelsea's mediocre recital. Remember that time you won Engineer of the Year at Morrison & Associates? Marcus asked, sitting down next to her. You called your parents right away. I was here. I remembered. I had called so excitedly that I could barely speak properly. His dad answered on the third ring. Dad, I won. Engineer of the Year. They're going to feature her in the company magazine. That's great, Jake. Very responsible of her to keep up the good work. By the way, can you transfer $2,000 to Chelsea's account? Her credit card is having problems. I started counting in my head. The air conditioning emergency that cost $3,000. Chelsea's temporary problems that added up to more than $15,000 over 2 years. The kitchen renovation that would benefit the whole family, but that only I financed. More than $40,000 in loans that turned into unacknowledged donations. Jake, you need to stop being the son who solves everything and gets nothing in return, Marcus said, his voice growing firm. They've created a system where you're the invisible provider and she's the spoiled princess. At that moment, my phone rang. Mom. I put it on speaker so Marcus could hear. Jake, honey, where are you? We woke up and his room was empty. You didn't even leave a note. I'm in Seattle, Mom. I needed some space. Space? What's all this drama? You've always been so level-headed. Chelsea is worried about you. Marcus rolled his eyes. Even when it came to concern, Chelsea was the center of attention. Mom, you gave me $10 for Christmas. It was symbolic, dear. You always said you didn't need material things. You're different from Chelsea. Her needs visual support. Visual aids. Code for she needs luxury and you don't even deserve the basics. What if I wanted visual aids too? The silence on the other end of the line lasted for several long seconds. Jake, are you going through some kind of crisis? Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional. Childish behavior doesn't suit you. Marcus signaled for me to hang up, but I wasn't done yet. Mom, how many cars have you bought for his entire life? Jake, this is ridiculous. 0. The answer is 0. How many cars did you buy Chelsea? The situations were different. 3. 3 cars. The first when she turned 18, the second when she crashed the first one, and now the BMW because she needs a professional image. Jake Collins, stop this immediately. You're being jealous and immature. Jealous and immature. For wanting to be treated with the same consideration they gave her sister. When was the last time you visited me, Mom? Another silence. When was the last time you asked how his job was going without asking to borrow money? Jake, you're overreacting. How many times have you canceled plans with me to attend to some emergency with Chelsea? Marcus was writing down the answers on a piece of paper. 0 visits in 2 years. 0 questions about my job in the last 6 months. 8 last-minute cancellations in the past year. Mom, I need time to process some things. How long? I don't know. Maybe forever. I hung up before she could answer. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. Man, that was brave. But you know they're going to ramp up the manipulation now, right? They'll use guilt, emotional blackmail, maybe even threats. He was right. My phone started vibrating immediately. First message from Chelsea, Jake, Mom is crying. How can you be so cruel to her own family? Second message from Dad, his behavior is unacceptable. Come home immediately or we will have a serious conversation about his future in the family. Third message from Mom, my blood pressure has skyrocketed because of him. The doctor said stress can cause a stroke. Is that what he wants? Marcus read the messages over my shoulder. Basic Emotional Manipulation Manual. First they make you feel guilty, then they use authority, then they make his health her responsibility. It works, I admitted. It always has. I always come back, apologize, and continue the same pattern. But now you're seeing the pattern clearly, Marcus observed. What's going to be different this time? I looked at the messages that kept coming in. They all followed the same manipulative script that had worked for decades. That's when I had an idea. Marcus, Do you still have access to that data analysis software from his company? I do. Why? I opened my laptop and started browsing through my files. Years of emails, text messages, scanned photos, scanned receipts. All the documentation of my life that I kept organized out of professional habit. I'm going to do something I should have done a long time ago, I said, connecting my cell phone to the computer. I'm going to treat my family like an engineering project. What do you mean? I'm going to document, quantify, and analyze exactly how he treated me over the years. With hard data, graphs, irrefutable evidence. Marcus leaned over to see the screen. Do you want to scientifically prove that he's horrible? I want to remove subjectivity from the equation, I corrected. He always manages to convince me that I'm overreacting, being too sensitive, misinterpreting situations. But numbers don't lie. I started creating spreadsheets. Column 1, date. Column 2, event. Column 3, treatment I received. Column 4, treatment Chelsea received. Column 5, financial cost involved. First year of college, I worked 25 hours a week to cover personal expenses. Chelsea received a monthly allowance of $500. Second year, my parents missed my presentation at the engineering symposium because Chelsea had a dentist appointment. They paid $8,000 for her orthodontic treatment that same month. Third year, I canceled my exchange program plans because I couldn't afford it. Chelsea spent 3 months in Europe, a trip fully funded by her parents. With each line I filled in, the pattern became clearer and mathematically irrefutable. How many pages will this report be? Marcus asked, seeing how fast I was typing. It doesn't matter. What matters is that, for the first time, I'll have objective data to show them. My phone rang again. This time it was Chelsea. Jake? You've disappeared off the face of the earth. Mom is freaking out, he is furious. What's going on with you, Chelsea? I kept my voice calm as I continued typing. Chelsea, can I ask you a question? Sure. In her entire life, how many times has she paid for something for our parents? A gift, dinner, repairs, anything. That's a strange question, Jake. Are you okay? Just answer it. I don't know. A few times, I guess. A few. And how many times have he paid for things for you? Jake, this has nothing to do with. It has everything to do with it. Do you have any idea how much money they've invested in you compared to him? He's always been more independent. No. I've always been forced to be more independent. Chelsea was silent for a few seconds. Jake, you're scaring everyone. Come home and we'll talk as a family. Chelsea, have you ever wondered why I never got married? Why I never brought anyone home to meet the family? Because it's his being picky. Because I learned that love is conditional. That value is measured in usefulness. That family means unconditionally supporting one person while the other must constantly prove they deserve attention. Now she really was quiet. You grew up thinking you were special, Chelsea. And maybe you are. But I grew up thinking I was invisible. And I definitely feel that way. I hung up and went back to the spreadsheets. Marcus watched for hours as I built a complete database of 3 decades of documented favoritism. When I was done, we had graphs showing disparate financial investment, timelines of missed events versus prioritized events, and quantitative analysis of language used in family messages. Jake, Marcus said, looking at the final screen. This isn't just evidence of favoritism. It's evidence of systematic emotional abuse. He was right. The data didn't lie. And now I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about forcing them to objectively face what they had done for decades. What if he refused to acknowledge the facts? Well, then he would find out what happens when a responsible son finally decides to stop being responsible for the emotional well-being of those who never took responsibility for his. From that moment on, our relationship would be based on data, not manipulation. And the data was about to tell a story he could never deny or distort. Over the next 2 weeks in Seattle, I turned Marcus's apartment into a command center. The dining table disappeared under piles of chronologically organized documents, while 3 monitors displayed spreadsheets, graphs, and timelines that told the mathematical story of 34 years of favoritism. Jake, you're obsessed, Marcus observed, bringing coffee on the morning of the 10th day. You've been typing non-stop since you woke up. I showed him the main screen. Marcus, look at this. Parental investment graph over time. The blue line is his, the red is Chelsea. The two lines told a brutal story. My line remained almost flat near zero, with occasional small spikes for inexpensive birthday gifts. Chelsea's line climbed steadily, with huge spikes representing cars, trips, apartments, and financial emergencies. The total amount comes to $260,000 in her favor, I continued. $260,000. While I've received approximately $8,000 over my entire life. Marcus whistled softly. That's enough difference to buy a house. Exactly. And now comes the most interesting part. I opened another spreadsheet showing our current financial situation. Chelsea is broke. Credit card debt, BMW repossessed, living off sporadic jobs. Me? Net worth of $400,000, no debt, solid career. You want to prove that overindulgence hurt her? I want to prove that his system was a complete failure. That all those years of protecting Chelsea actually destroyed her. And that all those years of teaching me independence were just excuses for neglect. My phone rang. Chelsea, for the 12th time that week. Jake, please, you need to come home. Mom isn't eating right. Dad has started drinking more. They think you're going to do something drastic. Like what, Jake? I don't know. Sue him? Write about our family online? Expose our private life. Interesting. They feared public exposure. Chelsea, can I ask her another question? Jake, please stop with these weird questions. How many of his birthdays have I been present for? Silence. All of them, Chelsea. All 32. Even when he was in college, even when he lived in other cities. I always found a way to be there. I know, Jake, you've always been. Now tell me, how many of his birthdays have you missed? More silence. 18, Chelsea. 18 of his 34 birthdays. More than half. The situations were different. They always were. I hung up. Marcus watched my expression. They're panicking because you're not following the usual script. Script? Man, he always did the same thing. He'd get angry, but after a few days he'd come back, apologize, and continue being the perfect son who solves everything. Now he's been gone for 2 weeks and he's building evidence as if it were a criminal case. He was right. For the first time in my life, I had broken the pattern. That afternoon, she started scanning photographs. Decades of family moments that revealed uncomfortable truths when organized chronologically. Chelsea's 5th birthday, party at the club with a pony, clowns, and 50 kids. My 6th birthday, 3 friends in the backyard eating box cake. Chelsea's high school graduation, dinner at an expensive restaurant, expensive gifts, the whole family present. My college graduation, Pizza Hut, just him and his parents, who arrived late. Each visual comparison was a stab in the heart, but also a validation. My perception of reality was correct. Dr. Patricia Lawson, the therapist Marcus recommended, examined my charts during our first session. Jake, this isn't just favoritism. It's systematic emotional neglect, she said, adjusting her glasses. He was parentalized, forced to be the responsible adult while her sister was allowed to remain a child. Parentalized. When a child is forced to take care of their parents' emotional needs instead of receiving care. You became his child who never caused trouble, who always solved problems, who never needed anything. But wasn't that my choice? No. It was a survival mechanism. You learned that love was conditional. It depended on being useful, responsible, invisible when necessary. Her words echoed as I continued to compile evidence. It wasn't just about money or gifts. It was about years of psychological conditioning. In the second session, I showed her the messages my family had sent. Dad, Jake, his behavior is causing health problems for his mother. Be a man and fix this. Mom, I can't sleep thinking about what we did wrong. You've always been our pride and joy. Please tell me what I can do to make this right. Chelsea, Jake, you're destroying our family because of wounded pride. This isn't like you. Do you see the pattern? Dr. Lawson asked. Guilt, blame, and minimization, I replied, recognizing the tactics she had taught me to identify. And how does that make you feel, His? Like I'm the problem. Like always. But are you the problem? For the first time, the answer came without hesitation, no. During the third week, I expanded my investigation. I called uncles, cousins, family friends. The conversations were revealing. Jake, I always noticed how you were treated differently, Aunt Sandra admitted. But it wasn't my place to comment. His parents always justified it by saying you had different personalities. Cousin Dave was more direct. Man, I always thought it was weird. Chelsea got a car, you got a pen. Chelsea got a trip, you got a book. Everyone saw it, no one said anything. Why did no one ever say anything? Because his parents would get furious when anyone questioned it. They stopped talking to Aunt Carol for 2 years because she commented on the different treatment. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. It wasn't just my perception. It was a pattern that the whole family recognized, but everyone tolerated to keep the peace. Marcus found me organizing the final timeline on Wednesday night. How do you feel about all this now? He asked. Powerful, I replied, surprising myself. For the first time, I have complete clarity about what happened and objective evidence to back up every claim. And what's the next step? I showed him the email I had just finished writing. Family, after careful reflection, I have decided that we need to have an honest conversation about our family dynamics. I will be in Portland next weekend for cousin Vanessa's wedding. I suggest we get together on Sunday morning for a family discussion. Come prepared for a frank conversation. Man, you've really turned this into an engineering project. It's the only language he'll understand. Numbers don't lie, they don't manipulate, they don't make drama. If you are following this journey of self-discovery and preparation to face years of family injustice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the next part of the story will show how solid evidence can completely transform the dynamics of a toxic family. That night, I printed out all the charts, organized all the photos, and prepared a 45-minute presentation that mathematically documented 3 decades of unequal treatment. For the first time in my adult life, I had a fully prepared strategy for dealing with my family. And for the first time, I wasn't going to Portland as the son who needed his approval. I was going as the man who finally understood his own worth. What they didn't know was that I had reserved the conference room at the hotel where the whole family was staying for the wedding. A formal presentation, with projected evidence, organized data, and a clear agenda. They had spent 34 years teaching me that love is conditional. Now I was going to teach them about consequences. The conference room at the Magnolia Hotel was reserved for 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Oval table, projector installed, chairs arranged in a semicircle. When my family arrived, her expressions ranged from curiosity to barely concealed irritation. Jake, what is this charade? Dad grumbled, adjusting his tie as if he were going to court. It's a conversation we've needed to have for a long time, I replied, connecting my laptop to the projector. Chelsea walked in wearing a dress that cost more than my week's salary, even though I was broke. Mom followed her, already holding tissues, her favorite weapon of emotional manipulation. Please have a seat. The first image projected was a photo of us at age 5. Chelsea at an elaborate birthday party at the club, surrounded by 50 children and professional decorations. The graph appeared on the screen. 2 lines spanning 30 years. The blue one, representing spending on me, remained almost flat. The red one, for Chelsea, climbed dramatically. Total amount invested in Chelsea, $260,000. Amount invested in me, $8,300. Dad turned red. Jake, stop this. $251,700 difference. I continued without giving him a chance to interrupt. Enough to buy a house. Or fund a full education. Or, well, treat 2 children equally. Chelsea muttered something about different situations. Next slide, missed family events. The timeline appeared on the screen. 18 of my missed birthdays versus 0 of Chelsea's. My college graduation versus her recital on the same day. Engineer of the Year award versus Chelsea's dentist appointment. You missed more than half of my birthdays, but you never missed one of his. The circumstances were Dad tried to explain. Circumstance number 1. Chelsea had a soccer game on the day of my high school graduation. Circumstance number 2. Chelsea's dentist appointment on the day of my college graduation. Circumstance number 3. Stop. Mom shouted, tears already streaming down her face. Why are you doing this to us? Because you did this to me for 34 years. I pressed the remote. Linguistic analysis of family messages appeared on the screen. Messages to Chelsea, we love you, we're proud, you're special. Messages to him, be responsible, work hard, he always gets by. Chelsea shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Jake, I never asked you to. No. You never asked. But you never questioned it either. You never wondered why you got cars while I got pens. Why his debts were family emergencies and my accomplishments were expected. I clicked to the next slide. Documented family loans. $42,000 I've lent you over the past 10 years. 0 paid back. 0 thanks. But there was always a new Chelsea emergency. Dad stood up abruptly. Enough. You can't reduce family to spreadsheets and charts. Yes, I can. Because you reduced my value to utility. My whole life, I only mattered when you needed something. I showed them the final evidence, the messages from the last 3 weeks. Look at how you reacted when I finally set boundaries. Emotional blackmail, threats, guilt-tripping. The complete manipulation manual. Mom was sobbing loudly now. We always loved you equally. No. You loved Chelsea unconditionally and tolerated me conditionally. That's when Chelsea finally spoke, her voice smaller than usual. Jake. I really didn't realize. I thought you liked being independent. Forced independence is not a choice, Chelsea. It's abandonment disguised as virtue. I turned off the projector and turned to her. Now I'm going to explain how this is going to work from now on. First option, you recognize the pattern, we do family therapy, and we build a relationship based on mutual respect. Second option, you continue to deny it, and this was her last conversation. You can't give us ultimatums. Dad exploded. I can. For the first time in my life, I can. Because I've discovered something fundamental, I don't need his approval to have value. Dad tried to regain his usual authority. Jake, you're being dramatic. Family is family. Family is a choice. DNA only makes us relatives. I put my papers in my briefcase and stood up. You have 48 hours to decide. Family therapy or see you at the next funeral. I walked toward the door, but Chelsea called out to me. Jake, wait. I want to try. The therapy. All of it. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob, without turning around. What about you two? Long silence. Finally, Mom whispered. What do we need to do? Admit that you failed. Stop justifying. Start changing. Dad still resisted. We can't change the past, Jake. No. But you can stop repeating the same mistakes. I turned to face them one last time. For 34 years, he taught me that love is conditional. Today, I teach you about consequences. I left the room, leaving them with the mathematical evidence of his own moral failure scattered across the table. For the first time in my life, I walked away from his side without looking back, without guilt, without the burden of being the son who always had to be perfect to deserve crumbs of attention. Outside the hotel, Marcus was waiting for me in the car. How did it go? Liberating, I replied, feeling my shoulders relax for the first time in decades. What now? Now we find out if he chooses family or just kinship. As we drove back to Seattle, my phone started ringing. First Chelsea, then Mom, then Dad. For the first time, I let it ring. Because I finally understood that his silence was no longer about accepting the unacceptable. It was about demanding the minimum that any human being deserves, to be seen, valued, and loved without having to constantly prove that you are worthy. 6 months after that Sunday at the Magnolia Hotel, I was sitting in Dr. Patricia Lawson's office in Seattle, no longer as an individual patient, but participating in the first family therapy session via video conference. On the laptop screen, my parents appeared side by side on the couch in his smaller Portland home. They had sold the big house 3 months earlier. Chelsea was connected from her small apartment, which she now shared with a coworker. "Jake," Dad began, his voice different from the authoritative tone I had known for decades. "I want to start by apologizing. Really. No attempts to justify or explain, just acknowledgement that we failed his mother." Mom nodded, her eyes red but without the usual manipulative drama. "I spent 3 months reviewing every photo, every memory, every decision we made. The numbers don't lie, Jake. We didn't treat him equally." Chelsea interrupted, "Jake, I want you to know that I did something I should have done years ago. I sold all the expensive jewelry I received as gifts and opened a savings account. I'm paying back the loans you took out for him." It was the first time in my life I had heard Chelsea take financial responsibility for his own problems. "I also got 2 jobs," she continued. "Graphic design during the day and waitressing 3 nights a week. For the first time, I'm paying my own bills without help." Dr. Lawson watched her closely. "Jake, how does that make you feel?" "Surprised," I admitted. "But also cautious. 3 decades of patterns don't change in 6 months." "You're right to be cautious," his father said. "We don't expect him to trust us right away. We want to demonstrate change through actions, not words." In the months that followed, action spoke louder than any promises. Dad stopped drinking completely and started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I discovered that alcoholism had been a silent factor in our family dynamics for years. Mom started taking antidepressants and admitted that she had projected her own insecurities onto our personality differences. "I was always afraid that you didn't need us," she confessed during a session. "So I stopped offering what he never seemed to ask for." Chelsea turned out to be the most surprising of all. The need to face real consequences for the first time in her adult life revealed a strength none of us knew she had. "Jake," she told me during our 5th session, "I spent my whole life thinking that being spoiled was love. In fact, it was neglect in disguise. You loved me so much that you forgot to teach me how to love myself." The most significant change came on my own 35th birthday. For the first time in decades, all 3 of them called, not to ask for something, but just to celebrate my existence. Mom had sent a handmade card with a 5-page letter detailing specific memories she had of me as a child. Not generalities about being responsible, but real memories: how I helped elderly neighbors at age 8, how I read to her when she was sick, how I always included excluded children in games. Dad transferred $5,000 to his account without explanation, with only a note: "It's not a loan. It's not a payment. It's recognition that you deserved so much more over the years." Chelsea sent me something even more valuable, a detailed letter of recommendation that she had written to his boss, describing projects I had done and how I had supported her during her difficult phase, her first public admission that she had been a burden rather than a victim. But the most profound transformation happened within myself. Marcus noticed it during a dinner in December. "Man, you're different. Not just more confident. More present." He was right. For years, I had lived in emotional survival mode, always hypervigilant about how my family perceived him, always ready to prove his worth. Now, for the first time, he existed simply because existing was enough. At work, I received my 2nd promotion in 8 months. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I finally had the mental energy to focus completely on my projects when I wasn't constantly processing toxic family dynamics. I met Sarah during a pottery class I started attending, something I had always wanted to try but never had time for because I was always dealing with family crises. She was an architect, had a smile that lit up entire rooms, and when I told her about my family history, her reaction was perfect: not pity, but respect for the strength I had shown. "You didn't just survive," she said during our 4th date. "You used a destructive situation to create something better. That's art." 6 months later, when I took Sarah to meet my family on Thanksgiving, the difference was astronomical compared to previous relationships I had unconsciously sabotaged. My parents treated her like an honored guest, not an intruder. Chelsea asked genuine questions about her work and shared positive stories about me, some I didn't even know she remembered. More importantly, I didn't spend the entire visit tense, waiting for humiliation or unfair comparisons. I relaxed and allowed Sarah to see my family as she really was, imperfect people genuinely trying to become better. That Christmas, exactly 1 year after the $10 bill, we gathered again in the living room in Portland. The tree was smaller, the house was smaller, but the energy was completely different. Dad handed me an envelope. Inside were deeds, The family cabin they had bought when I was a teenager was now in his name. "It's not a gift," he explained. "It's recognition. You've paid for her many times over through all the loans we've made over the years." Chelsea gave me something even more meaningful, a photo album that she had compiled, showing all the moments I had missed or ignored where I was present, supporting, being a brother even when I received no reciprocity. "I want you to see what I finally got to see," she said. "You were always the best of us, even when we didn't recognize it." Mom handed me a small box. Inside was the porcelain piggy bank from my childhood, not the cheap plastic one from the previous Christmas, but one I had made at school when I was 8 and given to her, which she had kept for 26 years. "You always had value," she whispered. I was just too blind to see it. But the most powerful moment came when Sarah asked about our family dynamics over dinner. "How did you manage to change so much?" she asked with genuine curiosity. Dad answered first. "We had to choose between sticking with our comfortable version of the story or facing the truth about what we had done. Jake forced us to choose. And the truth," Mom added, "was that we had 2 wonderful sons, but we were raising one to fail and punishing the other for succeeding." Chelsea concluded, "Jake gave us the hardest and most generous choice: change or loss. Most people only offer loss." 2 years later, as I write this from the porch of the cabin that is now officially mine, I can see Chelsea teaching her nephews to fish on the lake. She married Tom, an accountant who met her when she was at her lowest point financially and fell in love with her determination, not any privilege. My parents, now doting grandparents, treat Chelsea's children and the future children Sarah and I plan to have in exactly the same way, with unconditional love that doesn't depend on personality or needs. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about revenge or justice, but about the transformative power of setting clear boundaries. For 34 years, I allowed my family to treat me like a supporting character in my own life. Not because of any conscious malice on his part, but because dysfunctional systems perpetuate themselves when no one challenges them. The $10 bill wasn't just the final insult, it was the concrete evidence I needed to recognize a pattern I had normalized due to the slow buildup of her toxicity. My revenge was not to destroy my family, but to force them to become the family they could always have been. Some people ask him if it was worth risking losing them all to achieve change. The answer is simple: I had already lost them. What I gained was finding them for the first time. If this story of family transformation touched his heart, don't forget to subscribe to the Twist and Revenge channel. We have dozens of stories about people who refused to accept the unacceptable and found creative ways to reclaim their personal power. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to allow others to continue hurting him and themselves. The last time I saw that $10 bill, it was framed in Dr. Lawson's office, with a small plaque, "The catalyst that saved an entire family." Today, his worth is not measured in dollars or expensive gifts, but in the quality of the relationships he chooses to maintain and the respect he demands as a minimum standard. And that, I have discovered, is priceless.